Good morning and welcome to Tri-Valley Nonprofit Alliance's December program, Cultivation Counts. We're really happy that you're here. And all of us at TVNPA, come on in there. How mayors are. And, all right, Moni. Alan, come on. All right. Are there other people out there? Yes. Will you go grab them? Yes. Tell them they're going to miss their introduction. Okay, so welcome to our program, Cultivation Counts. We're glad you're here, and we all wish you a very happy holiday season, filled with everything you love and hopefully some rest. I'd like to thank everyone who brought delicious desserts today. I'll tell you, the very first person who signed up was the mayor, and he responded immediately that he was bringing some figgy pudding. I never had figgy pudding before, but I did try it. It's excellent. So if you haven't had it yet, make sure you grab some on the way out. We have cannolis, we have flan, we have Russian tea cookies, we have all sorts of stuff, so check it out. I'd also like to thank our community program sponsor, Sandia Labs, for their continued support, and thank everyone who made donations in the registration. We really appreciate your support as well. And then, okay, so I want to make sure you're all aware of our new roundtable programs. We launched our third cohort of the Executive Director Roundtables in October, and it's an amazing group. In January, we'll start our second cohort of the Nonprofit Professional Roundtable, and that's for people who are like in the first 5 years of being involved in nonprofits and want to get acquainted with other people and learn more about the nonprofit infrastructure and how things work in the ecosystem. That's what I was looking for. It's once a month, and they meet for 6 months, and it's a great way to build some relationships. We're also launching our Community Engagement Roundtable in January as well, also 6 months. And if you work with the community, it will be a great place for you to connect with others who work with the community and learn not only their secrets, but to build those relationships. And Mary Grace, she's a TVNPA board member, and she's at Access Community Health, and she will be leading that particular program. So check it out. Registration is going to close in about 2 weeks. It's on our website at tvnpa.org. Okay, so thank you. You guys did really great at that. I appreciate it. We'll get to them and let them do their own introductions. So in just a second, I want to first tell you what an amazing community we have. We're thinking up this program, and immediately I had the 3 community donors that came to mind, and then I had the 2 executive directors I would love. They're some of my most impressive fundraisers that I know, and so Chris and Jen came to mind immediately. And I will tell you, I had backups for each category, but every one of these people up here responded with a yes right away. And so that's how amazing that is. Didn't even have to go into one backup. So really appreciate the support that you provide for our community always. And okay, so, and let's see. Yeah, so today our panelists, we have the wonderful Jean King. Many of you know her already, and the always entertaining Jay Davis, and the wonderful Lori Souza. And then our, and of course we have Chris Carter, the Executive Director of Livermore Valley Arts, right here, and Jen Lenard-Benson, AD of Sunflower Hill. I am now going to turn this over to Jen and Chris to get this started, and they'll open up, once they're done talking, they'll open it up for Q&A at that point. So take it away.
Okay. Thank you so much, Kathy. Thank you everyone for coming. We appreciate you joining on this lovely morning. Happy holidays. Chris and I thought it would be a great idea to ask the panelists to get a little bit of an icebreaker going about holiday traditions. And so would you like to share any sort of holiday traditions or family traditions that you've carried on throughout the years that are your favorites? Jean?
I guess the one is that Christmas Eve we always go out for a ride and go around and see all the lights that are on them with people's homes.
Same! We did that every year as a child. Isn't it just magical? So Candy Cane Lane, yes? No?
Right, and then it gives a chance for Santa to come to the house.
Lovely, lovely. Good thinking, good thinking. Jay?
Well, despite being married to me for 60 years, Mary remains a young girl at heart. And I think our best tradition is Mary getting her tree. So we go out, as soon after Thanksgiving as is decent, get a tree, bring it home, soak it for a day or two. I put it in the living room, get it up, help her put the lights on, and then I step away and let her do her magic with decades of collected stuff. It's never the same year to year, it's never very elaborate, but every single ornament that hangs on it has a history, and it's kind of fun. So that's I think, our most important single tradition.
It sounds like you've learned how to work well together at the holidays. We call it Christmas arguing, not Christmas decorating at my house. I understand completely.
Mary and Jay are quite the team, and we have a similar tradition. I've been collecting ornaments since, I don't know, a long time. My first one came from my mom back in 1979. I still have it. And so now as Brian and I have an opportunity to travel a little bit, we collect an ornament wherever we go. So even in the middle of July, we're in a Christmas store buying an ornament, so that's what we do.
That's great. Thanks, Lori. Appreciate you sharing. Chris, do you want to share one?
I was going to ask if you had any holiday traditions.
It would actually be the same as Jean's. As when we were
See
children,
the lights.
we would go at Christmas Eve and look at lights.
We like to, we get all dressed up on Christmas Eve in Victorian era garb, and we go out to the neighborhood, and we go trick-or-treating.
This is not real.
No,
Okay.
then we come home and we hunt for Easter eggs. No, we do different things every year, but when we're with my family, my dad's side of the family, I know Carter sounds really Italian, but my dad's side of the family is Italian. And so he makes his grandmother's ravioli recipe every year, and he'll make like 400 or 500 raviolis, and it freezes a lot of them, so we have raviolis throughout the whole year, and it's all homemade. And it's his grandmother, and then his mother, and then he started doing them. He's going to be 81 this year, so eventually I'm going to have to start getting my sister to do them. That'll be the next step.
You're one of those.
No, I'll help out. Anyways, but we're here to talk about philanthropy. I'm really fortunate to know all three of you. Y'all have all been so generous over the years to so many different organizations. And I know for me growing up, I always was kind of taught with the mindset, if you're able to, you should give. And the more you have, probably the more, I always felt obligated, but then as I got older, I was like, this actually feels good to do. So I wanted to know kind of for you personally, and part of this is for us to get to know kind of the mindset of a donor, and I think a lot of us in the room are donors as well, but what motivates you to donate and to give, and why do you give, and do you have any kind of personal reason that kind of inspires you to give? And any one of you can answer that.
I don't mind starting. I think I am inspired by all the work that actually all of you do. And so as I learn about the different needs around the community, if I feel passionate about it, and I have certain areas that I'm most passionate about, I am inspired to give. And over the years, I have learned that the gift really comes back to me. I feel really good about it, and especially when I can see the impact. So when you share back with me how my donation has helped and what changes it's made, it feels really good. And I have subscribed to giving while I'm living, because I actually want to be able to see the impact of the funds that I've, quite frankly, worked really hard for.
I guess I'm motivated by my personal experience. I spent 30 years at the lab, and that meant I wasn't in Livermore a lot of the time. Strange assignments, heading the defense agency and running inspections in Iraq, things like that. And so when we came back and I retired, I could focus on the community I had been living in for over 40 years and really become aware of it, felt part of it. And so Mary and I began looking around for organizations that clearly could do things we liked in the community. And the slant we first took, which we took with Carol and the Pedrosi Foundation, was to teach our children to be philanthropists. So, I don't know, 10 or 15 years ago, Carol will remember, I suggested named scholarships. But we had our children pick their two favorite Livermore school teachers and name them. And this last year, we continued that tradition with our grandchildren, who now picked and named a couple of scholarships at Pedrosa. So that's the sort of thing we like to do. We like to contribute to the community, but also use it as an educational experience for the next generation.
I think one of my big interests is the environment. And so the first ones that I contributed to, I grew up in the 60s, or I was active in the 60s first, and so I'm very involved in the environment. And started off with the Sierra Club, and then you move on to the Nature Conservancy, which is wonderful, but since they have a $300 million budget every year, any contribution that I make is just kind of a token. So I like to contribute to local environmental organizations.
Thank you so much for sharing. It's interesting to hear how people kind of start or learn about giving. You think it seems sort of natural, but I don't know that it is. I'm glad that folks are teaching that and passing that on, because we need to build a generation of donors in the next round. So folks, do you remember the first significant donation that you made? And significant obviously is relative, right? But what was the time frame between sort of when you were introduced to that sort of charity or cause and the actual major gift? And then were you asked, or did you just sort of give it outright? And how did it make you feel?
Well, I'll go first this time. I guess my first one was when I first got out of college and I was making $10,000 a year, lived in a $100 apartment. I gave $100 to the Sierra Club, which I thought was a significant contribution at that time. And as I said, now some of the organizations, I don't give big, and it isn't significant to them, I guess, but it is significant to me as to what I give.
That's a really good point. Significance is sometimes about what the donor thinks is significant, not necessarily what the organization thinks is significant, right? I like that point. Jay?
I think the first significant gift I gave as a physicist will amuse you. The University of Texas, where I was an undergraduate, began coming at me, which is you expect after all. Texas had not a very good physics department. I was glad to go to Wisconsin for my graduate work. But it had the best German department in the country. And quite by accident, I ended up basically native fluent in German. And I still retain it. So the first gift I gave was to the German department, which was so startled they hardly knew how to take the money. It was really funny. And then, then I was nice to Wisconsin and so on from that. But then after a while, we began pulling it close to home. We tier our giving in about three tranches. One of the things around the valley that we can just write a check for. Those are small checks. And the next are what I call the Bunnies and Kitties Fund. Mary is allowed to write as many checks as she wants to animal organizations, so she writes those checks. And I don't worry about that. And then we go to our donor advised fund at Fidelity for sort of the gifts that go to national organizations that you feel like you should support for good reasons. And then finally, the really big gifts come in January when we have to take money from my IRAs. And those are the ones that, by and large, we make locally.
So I do remember the first one that I considered significant, and I was at a Rotary meeting, and Ted Kate was the speaker. He was the executive director for Las Positas College Foundation, and he came in and talked about an opportunity for anybody to be interested to match some funds that were coming from the Osher Foundation in California. They had started a fund where it was an opportunity to start scholarships at community colleges. And so the match was $13,000, which was a lot of money for me. And I went home and I told my husband, I said, I think this is something we might want to do, because we're both very passionate about continuing education. And he said, well, I don't know, because up until then we've been giving funds on a kind of a regular basis, but smaller amounts that we were comfortable with. And so we did it, and the way it worked is OSHA would match it, and now there's a scholarship at Las Positas College called the Science and Technology Scholarship, and we get to meet the donors the recipients every year. It's really very fulfilling, and so it does stick with me. And I think maybe 2 or 3 weeks went by before I reached out to Ted and said, this is something we want to do. So from the time I heard the talk to the time we actually donated, it took about 2 or 3 weeks.
Do you feel like the matching gift concept is a motivator for each of you?
It was in that instance for us. We don't always look for that, although it does feel good sometimes when you're like, okay, I'm going to give $100 and it's going to turn into $300 or something like that. That always, I don't know, as a scientist type, I do feel good that money's getting leveraged.
You kind of made an interesting comment, Jay, about timing. Like, we do this in January, we do this, you know, and I think that's good for people to know as fundraisers. Like, donors have a timeline for certain things that they like to do, and so that's my process has always been, I want to get to know the donor as well as I can to make sure I know when the appropriate time to connect with you is. And so I think that's a really good comment that you made. And I was going to kind of add that to this question is thinking about, you have all been asked for support repeatedly, and I'm sure you've had moments where it's like, oh, this is not the best way to ask, or do you have like I know everybody's different, but do you have like a preferred way that you like somebody to approach you for support?
I don't.
You don't?
I mean, you may think that I'm contradictory, but sometimes I don't want anybody to talk to me about it. I want it to be my decision. I want to know the organization. I want to know the people who are there, and I don't want anybody to bug me. And sometimes I do want to do it. If it's a big capital campaign, which there have been a lot lately, and then I would like to have maybe a personal lunch to talk so I can learn personally about this capital campaign. But it all varies.
Yeah.
I guess I'm...
Does it matter who, does it make a difference who it is making the ask?
I don't think
No.
so. Of course, if it's somebody I know,
That's what I mean, like
Yeah.
if it's somebody you're close
if
to.
it's somebody I know and I know their reputation, then in fact, that's the way it is with a lot of the things. If I know the people from the organization, or if I go to their fundraising dinner and I see, oh, other people that I know are supporting them too, then that means something to me. But I guess I'm undecided about how I like things.
I have a more active approach to that. I don't serve on boards because I'm a bad match to boards. I built both the facility and the business plan for the Center for Accelerated Mass Spectrometry, which is the Livermore Lab's most successful multi-user research agency. Then I organized field teams in Iraq and led them in very adversarial conditions where the other guys have guns and you don't, in the summer of '91. And then for 3 years I had the peculiar experience of being a civilian who had the status of a lieutenant general at the Pentagon running a combat support agency that did arms control and counterterrorism. So I have what the military calls the habit of command. They don't mean that as a compliment. And if I were on your board and I see a problem, I'm likely to try to fix it, and that is not very helpful as a board member. So I turn my activism around a different way, and it comes to the matching fund question. And I go to the organizations I'm very acquainted with, they're well represented in this room, and I frequently say, were I to give you money, to do this, can't you get a match, or would you like a match, or would this let you do something you really wanted to do and not been able to do? So we're pretty active about that within the community, and our big gifts tend to go in that path. I also, as a donor, really resonated with the phrase John Sensabaugh made sometime in the last year when he talked at Rotary. He said, it's not just enough to give money to them to do the programs they do. You should support their operations as well.
Say it again, louder for everyone to hear.
It ain't free. There's no such thing as a free lunch. So we quite frequently will say to them, this is what I pledged to you, but by the way, I've added 10% to it. Do you, support the operations, or you use your initiative, you're running this thing. And that feels pretty good to enable them. I'm in the middle of a discussion with the project now with an organization that I'm going to help them do something they wanted to do. And they will take our pledge and turn it into a match, which is useful. Kathy's done that. She knows how to do that too.
Yeah, I'm a little bit more like Jean. I'm not sure I have a preference on how to be approached. It's worked all kinds of different ways. A lot of times I'll get a notice from someone like on an email saying, we just started this new program and we're looking for funds to get it off the ground, and that might be something I'll do a little more research on. Sometimes I'll reach out to them. Sometimes I'll do my own independent research on it to find out what it's all about and then make a decision. Other times people have approached me firsthand and said, I have we have this need and we thought of you because you've given in the past, or we've seen that this was something you had an interest in. So it can work all different ways. I always feel bad if I have to say no, and sometimes I do. Sometimes I'm just tapped out, and it is cyclical. I mean, it's something I do have to plan over the course of the year, and then there are times when all the funds have already been spoken for, and so that always feels kind of bad. But then sometimes too, I'll turn it into a pledge, and I'll say, I can't give this year, but what about next year? And I'm rarely turned down.
Don't say that in this room. Well, and just from a fundraiser's perspective, one thing I always notice about people who are philanthropic is they ask certain questions, they do their research, they care, and if you're talking to somebody that kind of gives some thought to whatever you're asking, that's actually a really good person to have that relationship with. And by the way, no is okay. I mean, no should be something that you can say and feel comfortable saying, and it should be something we feel comfortable accepting too, because that's part of our plans is, we're gonna, we have to raise so much money, and, there's a calculation to that. So that means if we need to raise this, we're probably gonna need to ask for this because we're not gonna get it all. So we take all that into consideration. But I'm glad that you are so thoughtful in your process.
Thank you. And I do want to emphasize something Jean said, because I think this is super important, and that is the trust factor. So, I always do my own research, but if I know the individual or I know the organization, and I've seen a track record that I feel I can trust, and that makes a huge difference for me.
Well, that's one thing, maybe you can confirm this, because I always say people give to people. And you like what the organization does, but if you don't like the person who's running it, then that makes it a lot harder, right? So is that true?
Yes, that's true for me, right. But first the organization has to be doing what I think is important. I have certain things, but it does make a big difference to me if I know somebody who's where or I'm acquainted with them, and if they come and talk to me, it does make a big difference.
So I know we just talked a little bit about the two-letter word, no, and I know usually as fundraisers we hear that, and we think that's no for now, typically. As you say, maybe it turns into a pledge. I know one of my favorite mentors said in some of my fundraising training, it was, professional baseball players don't hit a home run every time they go to bat, so you cannot expect the same of yourself. You're going to get some no's. And as Chris said, that's okay and expected. But so what are some gifts that maybe you've said no to? I know you said, Lori, about capacity, but are there just some people that approached you in the wrong way, or maybe it wasn't the right fit? Have you ever said no, and why?
I guess I've said no sometimes because I kind of divide it between different categories. So there's the environment, there's animals, there's the arts, and all those things, and so I kind of like to distribute it. So if I figure I've given to that category, maybe I don't have any money or any funds that year to do that category. But then I keep it in mind, and then maybe it'll be on the first of my list. I also, as Jay do, I do from my IRAs, because that's for nonprofits. So there's only so much money in the IRA and stuff, so that's it. I think that's why I say no.
I know she can say no because she said no to me. And we survived that. Okay. This is a thing you've not mentioned, and it's how do you turn off a donor? What do you do that turns a donor off? When I was president of the Hertz Foundation, Kathy will remember this, I signed a personal letter to 500 donors every year. And we went through, a ream and a half of paper. If I knew them well, I wrote a personal note on it. It had nothing to do with the amount they had given us. It was just, we're here, we hear from you. I will not identify the organization, which has turned us off. Last year, I was sending them a very large donation, and it came from came off my IRA. And Fidelity did not want to send a check directly to the organization. They wanted to send it to me for me to send to the organization. I said, well, okay. And I said, but you know, I don't think the tax consequences that, but I just said not touch it. Oh no, we're going to send it. So they sent the check to me. So I called the organization, and I got a phone tree. Press 1 if you would like to know more about us. Press 2 if you would like to apply. Press 3 if you would like to give us money. I am not making that up. I'm not making that up. And the door will close when the pledge ends, and they probably will never know why. I mean, I don't expect somebody to come kiss my ring. That's what I'm looking for. But I don't expect it to be hard to give them money either. So engagement, you know, there's this famous story, many of you know, that in university fundraising, you always discover that the $2 million gift of somebody's estate comes from a man or a woman who's given them $20 a year for the last 30 years. And out of nowhere, they get a letter from an attorney saying, we've closed out this estate, and oh, by the way, how do we send this amount of money to you? So personal contact, signed letter doesn't cost you much. It was certainly worth a day of my time to send that to people. It's an important touch. It had nothing to do with the amount of money. It's just, we're here, we thank you.
I think that goes back to sort of what Jean was saying, what we talked about significance, is that, you know, $20 for one person could be someone else's $200,000,
Yeah.
right? And so it is making sure you're thanking folks appropriately in any way that makes sense, right? And be personal, because you don't know that $20 donor couldn't give you $2 million next year.
I have had to say no, and it's hard. That's just not a word I know very well, like for my own, committing my own time to things. But
Where were you when I was dating?
you absolutely made the right choice. But I have said no to organizations where I'm just not comfortable with the cause. You know, I'm feeling like maybe it's not well managed, or it's misdirected in some way. So if it doesn't align with my personal values and passion, I will say no. I don't feel bad about that. But something that Jay just mentioned about showing appreciation, I mean, that's really important. You know, I too am a fundraiser and serve on lots of nonprofit boards. And we try very hard to demonstrate our appreciation and to do it on a regular basis. And I'm just going to share with you one of my husband's pet peeves. He too is a philanthropist. He likes to give stock donations. And if that's an onerous process, you may not hear about it. I hear about it for weeks. And so he'll just tell me, if it's so important to them to have the money, why can't they make it easy for me to donate stock? So just keep that in mind, because if it gets handed off to a company, right? You know, he's no longer working with the nonprofit. He's now working with some kind of third party to get the transaction through. He just gets a little frustrated. So I think to Jay's point, you just have to be really aware of what kind of experience is your donor going through, right? And then hopefully they're honest with you and share it with you because you want to improve that. If it did go badly, you want to know. But Jay's right. Oftentimes we'll just say, I'm just not going to do that anymore.
Are you turned off if someone follows up and says, you know, why or how can we make this relationship better? Or is it sort of like we should give up at that point?
No, I think there's always ways to make amends, especially if that donor has a record with you. You know, they've been giving to you for years. Like, sounds like maybe it's happening with Jay. I think there's ways to make amends because we're all learning. We can make mistakes, but donor management, or whatever you want to call it, I think that's a really critical piece that we all do.
Can you talk more about that? And like, how do you like to be acknowledged or to be thanked, and is there a memory that you have of a time when it was like, wow, that was really good, that I really appreciate how they acknowledge me?
I'm going to start with what I don't care for.
Okay.
And you guys don't do this, by the way, but there are some national organizations that I give to regularly because I care very much about the cause. And then they want to send me stuff, right? And they send me like socks and calendars, and I don't know how to get out of the Audubon calendar. I get it every year, and I actually donate it because I don't no longer use a wall calendar. But anyway, so just keep that in mind. Sometimes you may be giving someone a token thinking that's a gift of appreciation, and I recognize that that's what the intention is. I'm just sharing with you that I don't really appreciate it. And because I want the money to go to the animals or whatever, right? So, but I just a simple thank you. You know, it can be, I'm not offended by email. I'm not offended by a note in the mail. It doesn't have to be a personal, come up and give me a hug. If you do that, that's great too. And it doesn't have to be a lot of fanfare, just a simple thank you. But mostly what I'm really impressed with is when I understand the impact of my donation. So when I get that kind of information, I'm really very appreciative.
I definitely second her thing on the camera, on the calendars, etc. And the Humane Society does that all the time too. I have dozens of calendars, which I give to the community, the thrift stores. They get all my calendars. But anyway, I think, and it's funny because one of the thank yous that I got was I was on the board of an organization. I was chairman and I was turned off. And then I thought, well, I'm no longer giving my blood, sweat, and tears to that organization, so I'll give them some more money. And they sent me, every board member signed the thank you card and sent it off to me, and I thought that was very personal. And I really appreciated it, that one little thing from them.
Well, yeah, you got to build a time lag in sending those gifts. Mary gets, we're proud of 200 animal calendars this year. And sometimes she'll give money to a new organization, and almost on a bi-weekly basis, we get more requests for money from that organization. And you've got to build a pause in to do that, because I gave you money, I want to watch you for a while and see what happens. The business of just churning to raise money makes you look bad. It doesn't matter what the amount is, it makes you look bad. It's almost as bad as the political solicitations that we're filling all of your phones now, right? Independent of party, we get, I don't know, 100 text messages a day and 100 emails a day. So building some time lag is good. These things kind of need to settle.
So how often do you think people should ask?
I think you're pushing your luck if you ask more than once a quarter. For a routine ask. Now, if you suddenly have, the opportunity to do something new, that's different, because the ask is very specifically focused on that task, that project. That's different than, I love you, I give money to you, but I don't need to hear about your sustained operation at a monthly level. So special requests are fine, but they should appear to be special. Fair enough, it's a good word. I also notice as I get older, I really use the subjunctive more. It's very important in these discussions to say, were I to give you the following amount of money, and see what happens. It's not fair, but what the heck, it's my money.
I think it's kind of nice, though, to be kept in contact. Not necessarily to ask me for money, but just to be in contact. There's some organizations which send me what they're doing, like maybe once a quarter or something, what they're doing with the different projects. And of course, I support the Bankhead Theater, and every week I get what's going on there, which I really like. And so, but it doesn't have to be money, but it keeps the organization in my mind, what they're doing, and how many meals or what new things they're doing, or what students they're giving scholarships to, or something like that. And so to keep that organization in my mind without asking for money. And sometimes they do ask for money, but not always.
Yeah, and I think I do, in my own head, in my own investment portfolio, if you will, for philanthropy, I do consider campaigns different than the ongoing. So I have some organizations that I feel very passionate about, and I give on an annual basis, and I expect the monies to go to operations. And because I recognize that the work that they're doing is so important and impactful, and you cannot do that for free. And no matter how fiscally responsible you are, it takes resources to get things done. So I appreciate everything you're doing, and I know that you're all very respectful with the funds. But a campaign, you know, is a little different. I do give to campaigns as well, and I'm so excited about Vineyard 2.0, all the work that they're doing, and I like the updates, you know, like as they went through different stages of the project, I wanted to hear, you know, like, we got the roof on, and, you know, the kitchen's in, and I think that's really cool. It kept me motivated as a donor, too, so.
Thank you so much. So we're going to shift a bit. I know, Lori, you talked a little bit about your husband and gift of stock, and I think Jean and or maybe Jay also spoke about DAFs. So talking a little bit about what are your favorite vehicles for giving, or does an organization, I guess, for folks out here, what should we be prepping for to receive if we want a major gift, right? Do we need to be set up for stocks or DAFs, or what is your preferred method of giving?
So my own personal preferred method is cash, but I have to tell you, my husband prefers stock, and I think as an organization, you actually need to be prepared for everything. You really do, and I know that's a real challenge for some folks, because some of these vehicles are actually pretty sophisticated, and it's gotten even more challenging over the last decade, but I think you just have to be prepared for all of it, and it's okay if there's a snafu. I think for Brian, he just wants to be able to talk to somebody to resolve it, and so when he ends up on the phone with, like, and I'm just picking on Fidelity, he'll end up with some kind of a robot he's talking to, and he gets really upset, so just be careful with that. Just want to make sure that your donor's having an experience that is productive. We all recognize that things can go wrong, and we're not going to blame you for that, but kind of stay in touch with it and help them through it if you can.
Facilitate and build confidence.
Okay, I do it with the IRA, and right, it used to be the company where I had the IRA, they would send a check directly. Now, right, it has to come to me and I have to mail it off, which is an awful lot of work for me to do. And I'm trying to be sarcastic, but you probably take it personally. The other thing is, if you want to give stock, that's great. If a stock has made more money than what you bought it for, but not all of my stocks have done that. So therefore, I have to sell them at a loss, and then I can give the cash. So, but it is nice. I have done it with the stocks directly, and that seems to have worked in the organizations I've done it to. But then the other ones where the stocks went down, I had the cash, so then I give the cash. So those are my ways.
We send small stuff through the mail, just writing checks. I've kind of quit giving large amounts by check because I'm not kidding. The only 4 checks I put a stop order on are checks in large amounts mailed to organizations in Livermore. The post office could not get it across town to somebody's mailbox. And I make no invidious comment about that, that's just data. I finally decided, damn it, I'll hand deliver it if I have to, rather than put it in the mail. I mean, I figure, national organizations can get that money somehow. Or I don't feel bad if they don't, and the check never appears, which is okay too. That's a different kind of message, maybe not theirs, but to have, this is the last 2 or 3 years. I've never put a stop order on a check in my life. Maybe because I'm in the county. That's right, I live on Buena Vista, and I keep forgetting I live in the county. Where's the mayor? I can beat the mayor. I asked a simple request if the city of Livermore would put its beautiful green signs on our street instead of the crappy white ones that the county puts there, and it turns out that's not legally possible. So we live in that strange island, and strange things do happen.
You guys don't want to do that.
I guess I should clarify too, when I say cash, so when I put a donation on my credit card, I consider that cash. Because actually, if I look at all the transactions, they're actually mostly on credit card.
Yep.
Oh, and it is absolutely okay for you to ask me to cover the service charge or whatever that thing is, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like if my donation is $500 and now I'm going to pay $500 and whatever to cover that, so you don't have to eat that. I am perfectly comfortable with that. So, because I know some organizations feel bad. They feel they have to eat that. I don't think you should.
That's a great tip.
Thank
Thank you. One of the things we wanted to ask, and you could perfectly honest, you can say somebody like Jen or me is, in your opinion, what makes someone a good fundraiser? Just give it a lot of thought. But what really does, like, when you're approached by somebody personally, what is it about somebody that you think, or they've done a good job? Like, how do you kind of rate that?
Well, and with all due respect, you two are phenomenal, so thank you for your work. I think I just gave a significant donation this year and will be continuing it. And I actually approached the organization. So this individual came to a Rotary meeting. By the way, if you haven't heard this theme, some of us get a lot of information from our Rotary meetings. And she gave her presentation about the work they were doing, and they were just getting started on a campaign. And I was very compelled by the stories that she was telling. So she was a good storyteller. And then I reached out to her. Now this is interesting. So I didn't have her contact information, so I went to their website. So, and they had this this general email that you send to, right? It's like info@. And I sent an email, and I said in there, I introduced myself, and I said, and I'm prepared to give you $10,000, and I'd like to talk to you more about the ongoing campaign. So I thought that would get somebody's attention. And several weeks went by, and I didn't hear. And so, yeah, and it's okay, because I really was very compelled by their mission. So I just hunted down the phone number of this individual and called her and said, not sure where that email went. And she was like appalled because she thought somebody was checking it regularly, but she apologized. I said, don't worry about that. Let's have lunch. I want to learn more about what you're doing, and I am prepared to write you a check today, and I'm very prepared to continue with this because I love what you're doing. So just be aware of that too. If you guys have an info@ email, be sure to check it regularly, because you never know when somebody's dropping you a big check.
Yeah, the old expression, keep it simple, stupid, is really important. The first time I ever went up for a one-on-one with a senator as the head of an agency, my congressional liaison officer said, you know, this guy or gal has given you half an hour. They do not want to hear your portfolio. They want to know what is the one thing they can help you with today or this week. And that was, you have to respect their time. If you're asking me for money, I got a lot of time, but on the other hand, a lot of people can use it. If you have a well-focused request, you get a lot of attention. If you start to lay the portfolio out, thanks a lot. It tells me that you don't really know what it is you're doing. Now, that's a very negative inference to draw. It may not be fair, but it certainly sends that impression.
You know, there are a lot of people in this room today that I have talked to about it, and that I have met, and that I've then maybe supported some of your organizations. And I think that's really important, because I think the personal touch is not over the phone, not clicking the different 1, 2, and 3, who you connect with, but to see somebody in person. And it's always been kind of interesting, you know, that half an hour before the program starts, there's somebody, you go over and you talk to them, and you say, well, what organization are you from? And it was amazing to me the first time I came here, because I thought I knew a lot of the nonprofit organizations, but there are these hundreds that are in our valley. And they are so varied and so different. And so I have met so many different people, and there's, you know, not that anybody asked me for any money at that time or anything. It was just nice to know them. That's the way I first met the first person from Sunflower Hill, too, because I was sitting there talking to somebody else, and this person came by, and I said, well, what's your organization? And he told me, and he said, didn't I know about it? And I said, no, I knew nothing about it. And so we just talked, and so from that, then I somehow got to the fundraiser, and I met some other people there. So I think the personal contact, to me, is very important. That they don't even have to ask me for anything, just to get to know them, to get a feeling for them. And so all of the people up here on the stage are very good at it. There's a lot of the people that are in the audience that are very good at it. But to me, it's the personal thing. It's the organization has to be good, but the person, I have to like the person that's coming and talking to me. So anyway, that's my point.
Great point. We appreciate that. We like being liked, as I'm sure all of you do.
I have to say, one thing I was super impressed with, one donation I gave, I did it online with a credit card, and within 30 minutes, I got an email from this person saying thank you. And I'm like, whoa, they're on it.
Sometimes you don't have to ask. This fall, we went to an event at Mark Christmas House for Access Community Health. And they briefed on what they were doing, briefed on how they were expanding, from Dublin and Pleasant into Livermore, briefed on the project, refurbishing that building on 2nd Street. But it was a straightforward project discussion. This is what we're doing, this is what we're doing. We had not given money to Access Health. We went home and sent them $5,000 that night. And that got a lot of attention. But it was not an ask, and it didn't need to be an ask to be very, very effective.
I'm going to say one more thing. I talk too much. But then anyway, and I think it's nice to be asked your opinion. I was asked to be on a committee that they were going to be a big fundraiser, big project. I wasn't going to be on the committee that was going to ask for the money. I was going to be on the committee that was going to plan what they were going to do, who they were going to ask, and who they would do. I was never asked for money from that organization, but I was kind of honored to be considered to have enough knowledge to help them work on their campaign. And so then I did become involved with that committee. And there's been some other committees where they come and they say to me, what do you think we should be doing? A startup committee, a startup organization. And they said, well, you've been on others, can you give us some ideas and what would you like from this committee? And they didn't ask me for any money, but I went back and I thought about it, and I know they're probably kind of, smoothing me over. But anyway, I was convinced, and I liked the people, and I liked being asked my opinion.
That's a great point. I know we talked about that at a previous TVNPA event. If you ask for money, you get advice. If you ask advice, you get money. That's kind of a rule out there for folks. Yes, it would. I have a lot of good bumper sticker thoughts and sayings. So, have you all ever asked for a major gift? And if you did, what was that experience like, and how did it make you feel?
Yes, I have, and I've been turned down. I don't like to do it, and I'm not good at it, so don't ask me to do it.
You can fool yourself asking for a major gift. When I was president of the Hertz Foundation, the chairman of the board and I flew to New York, and we met with an immensely wealthy man who'd started a hedge fund. I mean, immensely wealthy. And his brother or nephew was a Hertz fellow, so we thought, he knows about us, and he's kind of weird. We had a meeting in his office, no socks, didn't wear socks. First time I'd seen a cigarette smoked in an office in forever. What the hell, he owns the building, so I guess he can make his own rules. And we were trying to recapitalize the foundation at the time, and so I very modestly led him through my request for $25 million. Yeah, see, to him, probably not much. And it went really, really well. And we went out, and we were so happy. We went across the street to the Algonquin Hotel and had a martini at the bar in honor of Dorothy Parker and the people that sat around the Algonquin Round Table. We thought that was suitable celebration. Well, time went by, and when the gift came, it was, $5,000 or something. So I sort of underachieved, which is fine. But it wasn't his fault. I just misread him, and I'm sure he is probably better at saying no than anybody I'd ever run into. But he didn't say no. So yeah, it was the only time I tried that.
What was your process for trying to figure out how much to ask? What was that? Why was there such a discrepancy in that?
Well, the Hertz Foundation had been funded by John Hertz, of Hertz Rent-A-Car. And he had left a large donation, and it never fundraised. For 40 years, it simply invested the money and spent the money that came off of it. And one of my mentors, Hans Mark, had been on the board forever. And Hans put me on the board and he said, just watch. And I went to about 2 board meetings and I finally spoke up and I said, this is really great, but you're going to have to write a going out of business plan because this is not sustainable. It's not going to work. And it's 40 years. We can write a great press release about what you did, but if you don't raise money, I can draw the line for it. And these are academics. And they look at it would be unseemly to ask for money. Okay. So when I became president, we fixed that in a rather different way. And you get great vision of yourself. Hans said one of the then president, who I'll now identify, came up to Hans and said, where the hell did you get that guy? Where did that come from? And Hans said, go to the unabridged and look up lever. And the guy goes to the unabridged and looks up. The first definition of lever is a simple tool. Okay? Yeah, no, it's okay. I can live with that.
I have asked for major gifts, and with some success, and I'll talk about the 2 different types, but it's very humbling to be told no, especially when you're asking for a major gift. But that's part of it. You talked about that. You don't always hit the home run. And sometimes the initial ask doesn't work, and then there's follow-up, right? But I have had an opportunity to raise funds from public agencies, major gifts, raised about $1.2 million, a combination of different organizations. And those asks, when you're going to either a municipality or an agency, it's a different kind of setup, in my opinion. And it's a little more formal, and you really have to have all your ducks in a row, and typically involves a PowerPoint presentation. And then a personal ask, where I've had success has really been when I know the donor. It's a personal relationship. We share values and we share a passion about a particular cause. And so when I go to those individuals and I say, and I'm prepared to tell them what I'm giving as well, right? A lot of times I've said, Brian and I feel really strongly about this campaign. We're going to be donating such and such, and wondering if you might want to join us. And that seems to work pretty well. So I've had success and I've had failure, and it's humbling, but I think it's just part of what we do as fundraisers.
It just occurred to me, one of the things I think is really important if you're a fundraiser is that you should also give, and especially to the organization that you're fundraising for, and it doesn't need to be a lot, but you should be invested in it, because then it makes that ask a lot easier, right? Because you're a part of it.
Yeah, I forgot. I have a rule, which is, what do the members of your board give? If you're interested in me being a major donor, tell me what the members of your board did. And what I did to the Hertz board was make a histogram every year of their giving. And I said, I'm not identifying you, but you can find yourself there. See where you are relative to your peers. That helped with board giving.
That's kind. I worked for an organization where a colleague of mine at board meetings, she would put a special sticker on their name tags around the room. And if you didn't have a special sticker, it meant you didn't give yet. Oh yes, she was hardcore. And for that organization, it was always 100% giving. So there wasn't a threshold or an amount that people had to give, but there was an expectation of 100% giving from the board, for especially the reasons that you all are stating, that if the folks who are supposed to be your leaders and they're not investing, why should I? It's an amazing point, and I appreciate you making it.
I do serve on some boards, though, where the board members some of them are appointees, and my expectation for them is a little different. But I agree with what you're saying. I think it's important. I think it just demonstrates the commitment of the board themselves, and how important and how compelling the mission is of the organization.
I agree with that for boards, but it really turns me off, the other thing. If somebody comes to me and says, well, I gave so much, or somebody else gave so much, and implying that I should do the same, forget it. That's going to turn me off completely, because I'm not going to make my donation to keep up with somebody else. I'm going to take it because I like the organization, I like the person. So don't ever come to me with that.
I like, for me, I love donors who challenge us too, and it's maybe a little bit the opposite, like, well, I could give you this much, but what are you doing to raise that much in other ways too? And how, who else are you talking to, and what other work are you doing? And it's like, I don't want to make this commitment unless I see you're getting these commitments from other people too. And it kind of helps me to do a better job, which I appreciate donors that do that. It's hard sometimes, but I like that. And the other thing I love about fundraising, you talk about it, you have to kind of like the fundraiser. Like, I have to like the donor too, right? And it is a relationship, and some people come to me and they say, I don't know how you do that, I can never fundraise. And I say, well, I get to spend time with people who are successful, smart, thoughtful, philanthropic, and I learn so much from them. And it's like you're spending time with some of the best people in the world because they're successful and they know how to give back and they care. And there's all these traits that I admire in people who are philanthropic. So for me, it's a great benefit to being in that job. So it doesn't bother me at all. So I want to say thank you as donors, because it makes me feel good to be around people who are philanthropic, and I'm friends with a lot of them. I'm friends with Brian. Like, we go out to lunch sometimes and just talk about all sorts of weird things. And I love it. It's really expanded my own network in a lot of great ways. So I think being a fundraiser is a gift and a blessing. One thing, we were going to ask you one more question. Are we running out of time?
If we want to do Q&A, we want to do it in a minute.
Okay. Well, let me skip that question. That's not a good question. But I wanted to do this just before we open it up to other people's questions, because I love it. It's a good way to get to know people. And if you don't know, we do a podcast with the Bankhead, and the news one just dropped today, but it's every month, and we interview artists that are coming to the theater. And at the end, I like to play a game with them, and I call it Either Or, and it's a way to get to know you better. It's super easy, but I'm going to give you a list of options, and you just say which one you like better, right? So if I say dogs or cats?
Dogs.
Dogs.
I have no choice. Cats.
Cats, okay. It's all right, there's no wrong answer.
Whatever one comes to my door that I take in.
You're so generous. Fruits or vegetables?
Fruits.
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 I can go either way.
Sunrise or sunset?
Sunrise.
Sunset.
Probably sunrise.
Coke or Pepsi?
Neither.
Neither.
Coke.
I'm a neither.
San Francisco Giants or Oakland A's? Be
Neither.
careful what you say in here.
Neither.
Neither? Okay.
Giants.
Giants?
Oh, both. But now that the A's are leaving, kind of the Giants.
Toilet paper going over or under?
Over.
Over?
Under.
Under.
Yeah, it's over.
Over. Over, under.
You don't have cats in the house.
That's right. You have a cat.
We have cats in that entertainment center, boy.
Star Wars or Star Trek?
Star Wars.
Star Wars.
Yeah, Star Wars.
I'm wearing a Star Wars sweater. I don't want anybody to know. Elvis or the Beatles?
Beatles.
Beatles.
Yeah, Beatles.
Everybody says that. Sing. That's why we have a lot of Beatles cover bands that come here and no Elvis impersonators. Singing or dancing?
Singing.
Singing.
Dancing. You don't want to hear me sing.
Pirates or ninjas?
Pirates.
Pirates.
These are so stupid. I know, these are dumb questions, but
I'll
it's
say
fun way to
ninjas.
say
I don't know.
ninjas. Okay, good.
Nobody goes to lunch with him again, I can tell.
These are the things I talked to Brian about. The Three Stooges or the Marx Brothers?
Marx Brothers.
Marx Brothers.
The Three Stooges.
We're almost done. They're going to get hard here. Reese's Pieces or M&M's?
M&M's.
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 That was totally wrong. Giving or getting?
Giving.
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 Yeah, giving.
Livermore Valley Arts or Sunflower? No. I crossed that one.
Open Heart Kitchen.
The Tri-Valley or anywhere else in the world?
Say that again.
The Tri-Valley or anywhere else in the world?
Oh,
Do we have to name the other place?
How about the Tri-Valley right now in this moment or anywhere else in the world? It's so hard. She's like, it could be anywhere else than here right now.
I have to go back to my roots, to Wisconsin.
Wisconsin. Okay, fair enough.
the Tri-Valley.
Yeah, it has to be the Tri-Valley.
All right, thank you. That was it. That was super easy, right?
Good job, Chris.
Thank you, everybody. Do we have time for questions? Anybody have a question? Yes, sir.
It's kind of a question slash comment. Back to what, I think it was Jay talking about board giving, or maybe everyone was talking about this. I don't know if you were referring specifically to foundations and boards that are paid, but like, for example, our board, the Livermore Valley Craft Beer Foundation, we're all donating time. It's all 100% pro bono. Everybody else has jobs. To me, that time each and every one of those board members is giving to make us successful is payment enough. Now, some of us have, better socioeconomic opportunities, maybe have their own company, they can take more time off. But I think a lot of us here probably have a mixture of both of those things, and I just thought it'd be interesting to comment about that. And I so appreciate people's time. Money's great, time is so valuable.
Well, can I just make a comment, because I belong to a board that I can name it, SELF, it was Student Education Loan Fund. They had very little expenses. They just sent out a mailing once a year or something. So they said, ask the board, which was all volunteer, just to contribute enough money to pay for those stamps, so like $10 or something, so that they could absolutely say that every cent that was donated to them went for the cause and nothing went to administrative cases. So I think that was important in that case.
That's an interesting question. I've not thought of that aspect. Again, my big experience is with Hertz, where all the board members were cash donors, but also at least half of them were intensely involved in the days-long interviewing process to pick the people we gave the fellowships to. And so it was just sort of part of the job if you were a technical person and good at it. And I had never thought of the distinction you made. That's very good, because I'm certainly aware of people that do both.
Yeah, and I think you're making a very important point. I mean, our time is our most precious resource. And all the boards I serve on is volunteer. I think sometimes I've been on some boards where the request for the board members is either to give or get a certain amount. So even if you maybe can't personally give, you might go and recruit a donation of that amount. So just something to think about. I think maybe the point we're trying to make is not so much that everybody gives as much as it is it's a very tangible way to demonstrate the commitment, if you will, of the board. But so is your time. And it's very much appreciated.
I see Susan.
So first of all, thank you all for being here and for your continued commitment. Jay, you raised the point about giving for operating funds. And I think you all touched on that. Obviously, we can't deliver services if we don't have the staff and resources to do that. Has there been any messaging that's really encouraged you to include that? Or are there ways that you can advise us as fundraisers to help make that ask?
Well, I mentioned I became sensitized to it by John Sensabaugh, who runs the Tri-Valley, help me, Tri-Valley?
So
Three Valley.
Three Valley Fund.
other than saying
No, I was trying to move on from that. But yeah, it's fair to ask that question. The first time I ever met Sally, I had questions about the Lab Foundation, which I didn't understand. She'll remember this famously. And I didn't understand their first mail out. And she and Donna and I had coffee, and I sat and looked at it and said, I can't, I'm used to this, I can't find your indirect expenses in here. And they kind of blushed and said, well, we don't have any, the university pays them. Oh, that had never occurred to me, and maybe they don't want to talk about that for reasons that have to do with the lab's reaction or DOE's reaction or things like that. So I just stepped into a bear trap that I had never heard of and didn't know existed. So it is a sensitive subject because some of these organizations may have support that is kind of hard to acknowledge. But I think, a drop of water at a time. You begin to build it into your ask and say, this is how much money we give. These are the number of hours that volunteers give us in assessing these projects and programs and recommending the amount we do. And, it's fair for us to ask you for operating money. But again, you got to be prepared to be told no, but it's, you don't try to fund the whole thing on 2 donors. For any of us that give 5 or 10% is not a showstopper, and somebody it's fair to suggest an amount that goes to operating funds. I don't know, you guys do that?
Oh, I believe it, and this is my own personal belief, but I believe that the standard of 25% is a standard. I think that I don't want to donate to an organization that doesn't have a foundation of support where they have fair pay, where they're getting the best talent to do the job that's necessary. And when I invest my money, I want the right person stewarding that money, and I want it. So I actually want it to go to operations because I want that organization to be around year after year after year, because the programs they're going to get the money, they're going to get it taken care of themselves. But the foundation has to be built in order for that organization to be healthy. For my money, my personal money.
You've given me a number I didn't have. A lot of people are going to be grateful for that.
It is the standard is 25%.
I didn't know that. Now I know.
And I firmly advocate for that. I do think that if we're not doing that, we're anemic and we're not going to be sustainable year after year. We need insurance. We need to turn on the lights. To do programs. You have to have those dollars and cents for those back-end costs. We need IT, we need computers, we need phones that work, and those things aren't free.
And in lots of the organizations, when you're giving money, there's a little place where you click and says where it's most needed. So won't that go for operating funds?
Yeah, yes, most of the time it does go where it's most needed because other people will designate to different programs. Yes, for sure.
Because most of the time it seems as though that's what I'm going to, wherever they want to spend it, it's fine with me. I trust them that they're going to do the right thing.
We're so thankful for you, Jean, because there are a lot of donors that just don't have that same philosophy. And they say we wanted 100% to go to programs, but they don't understand that those programs can't function if we aren't able to turn the lights on and have, insurance to cover the organization and have gas to run the car or whatever it is that's needed. There's so many donors that are not like you, and we're so thankful that you have that philosophy, Jean. Thank you, thank you.
Well, I guess I just assume that's it, unless sometimes I get a thing and it's going to be for, some particular project, and so I'll donate to that and do it. But otherwise, if you don't support and let the organization use the money the best way, that's just my philosophy.
Agreed. And as a nonprofit too, I think we owe our donors the metrics, right? At the same time, here is where those operating dollars go, because I think we have to demonstrate that we are good stewards of the funds and taking due diligence.
Kathy and I met with a potential donor yesterday who was thinking of redirecting money from a very large organization towards her. And he was pathological on that subject because it was not a matter of amount, it was a matter of trust. He no longer trusted the organization that he was likely to give the money to, and no one could or would answer his questions about it. And his reaction was, it was a lot of money to him, a lot of money to us too, But to the large organization, it wasn't much money at all, and he just felt like he was getting blown off.
All right, I'm going to do real quick questions. Tracy, Denise, and is it Alan? Okay, we're going to go real quick that we got one answer per person.
Actually, Jen kind of led into my question really well, because as a new organization, how do you, if you haven't been around for a long time, are you comfortable giving to that organization? Like, what would make you comfortable giving to that organization? And some organizations, when you start, are all volunteer organizations. You don't necessarily have funding. So what would make you feel comfortable in donating to an organization such as that?
If I understood what they were going to put the money towards, right, and I was passionate about it. So that, you have to kind of start with that alignment. You're talking to people who care about what you're trying to deliver.
Yeah, a clear statement of what needs you're going to fill and why you think it isn't being filled right now is all that's required.
Okay, Denise.
Thank you.
So far you mentioned 100% board giving, likable fundraising staff. Are there any other indicators that you would like to mention that you look at for organizations?
I do look at track record very much. You know, has the organization actually delivered on what they promised? Yeah, and it takes a long time to build that reputation, and it takes only moments to destroy it. So you have to be really careful when you can gain the trust of your donor base to really take care of that.
And I do look at the 990 forms, if they've been around long enough to have 990 forms, and Charity Navigator and those ones that do rate them.
There's a tricky thing, which is if I know you pretty well, I look at the volatility of your staff. And now you operate with nonprofits, small nonprofits, in a very dangerous place because you have good people and you're subject to poaching. And that's okay. If you lose somebody because they move to a different job, that's okay. But if I get a hint that you're ejecting people, and I won't name them, but I've withdrawn from a couple of organizations that were just, the leader couldn't handle a new staff person. And so when the rate of ejection goes up and is visible, the black ball appears pretty quickly.
Alan.
Yeah, I just want to ask real quickly, I know we talked about operations. I'm with the Diablo Black Men's Group. We're not a brick and mortar organization. So when we come to the fundraising, like when we look up, we don't have an address, we do have a P.O. box. We're very efficient. We have an all-volunteer board. And our members are all volunteer. And we're very efficient with the money. We're probably more efficient with the money we receive for our scholarship program than United Way. So I want to ask all three of you, how do you feel when you're approached by organizations such as the Diablo Black Men's Group with no physical address in terms of donations?
Well, that's the organizations that I've been on almost all my time. Long time before I got to one that had a paid executive director. So I certainly support those types of organizations.
I assume that's reflected in your 990, and so that if I do research, that answers the question.
Yeah, I'm not. It's okay if you don't have a mailbox.
So I'm always concerned about that. You know what I mean? If you want to come to see our building or whatever, you won't be able to see that. We've had some great results.
Yeah. If you're just really clear about what you're delivering, I think that's what's important.
So I'm also going to say that I would be surprised if almost every organization here has all volunteer boards. So that's not an anomaly. Board members for nonprofits aren't generally paid, and we still expect 100% giving, just because. And we have a signed board agreement that commits to that, but it doesn't have an amount. It says meaningful. So meaningful might be $20 to somebody, and it might be $20,000 to somebody else. But it is important to see that board members are invested. Not that I want to get involved in all of this, because I don't. But I really, really want to just thank our panel so much for being here. We have thank you gifts, which I'm now kind of embarrassed to give you, but they're mostly edible. So hopefully you like eating chocolate. Okay, so we just want to take a minute too, because we have our TVNPA board works really hard. They work really hard, and I'm so appreciative. But also, we really want to acknowledge Marty Sutton for all of the work that she's done. She's like a coworker practically. So we just wanted to just recognize you really quick as well, and just say and you're free to go eat some more food out there. We have a lot of it, so thank you very much.
Happy holidays, everyone. Thank you for coming.